This curve shows the amazing impact that CO2 has on life that cools.
The vertical scale shows plant and tree growth as a percent of their potential. The horizontal scale shows CO2 levels from what would cause mass extinction of all life through levels known to be healthy.
Extinction occurs when CO2 levels drop below 150 ppm, causing photosynthesis to produce toxins instead of sugars, killing all life.
For example, because we don't know any different, we think that this pine tree should grow this much in 4 years, but that pine tree is actually suffocating.
Give that same pine tree healthy CO2 levels, and they double in height with 3 times the foliage.
Just think of how many endangered species could nest and feed in trees and plants that grow that fast and that much.
And after a forest fire, where the habitat for endangered species is destroyed, trees and ground cover would regenerate 3 times faster. But here we are, after the great CO2 crash, still edging closer and closer toward total extinction. Our oxygen of life buffer is gone. The last low CO2 near extinction event was only 20,000 years ago, about when humans found their way across the Great Bering Sea Land Bridge.
Since that near extinction event, CO2 levels, Earth's oxygen of life, have only risen to here, which is still suffocating the majesty of trees, grains, and plants that we have yet to experience and see.
But prior to that, CO2 levels were at optimal levels for life that cools, which allowed the plant and animal kingdom to flourish.
This includes the Jurassic period, known for its large animals and evolution of plants, and the Cretaceous period, known for its flowers and birds.
Note that the changes in CO2 are the opposite of changes in temperature.
And higher levels of CO2 for plants means more oxygen for us. Our oxygen comes from plants. More plants means more oxygen.
One reason why the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods supported massive amounts of both plant and animal life was higher and healthier levels of CO2 for plants and oxygen for animals.
What were these optimal CO2 levels that allowed life to flourish? More than twice the levels of today. Wow, impressive. I didn't realize that CO2, Earth's oxygen of life, was at such low levels that it was holding back the growth of trees, plants, and phytoplankton, affecting all life, even marine life.
But is there science that stands up to the Daubert legal standard, showing that man-made CO2 is making global and regional ecosystems healthier?
Yes, thanks to NASA.
NASA takes photos of Earth to monitor the health of its ecosystems, measuring the area of leaves and needles in multiple canopies.
Google NASA Green Earth. Read a dozen articles on how our biosphere has greened and how that mitigated global warming, all thanks to the rise in CO2, Earth's oxygen of life. This map shows green where land has been greening and brown where it hasn't. As you can see, greening has been happening around the world as CO2, Earth's oxygen of life, has risen.
From the edges of deserts, grasslands, forests, and wilderness, the growth of plants and trees increased along with their friend, CO2, Earth's oxygen of life. But there are exceptions. Specific latitudes have weather realities that can stress flora, core desert areas prevent flora growth, and human land use policies that lack restoration and wildfire control can also have huge impacts, as seen in central Russia.
This map color codes leaf area records from NASA. Brown shows sparse grasses, yellow more dense grasses and vegetation, green shows trees, and dark green shows dense forests. The NASA records through time show that thanks to the rise in CO2, Earth's oxygen of life, that grasslands are taking hold around deserts, trees are growing at higher elevations, and trees and vegetation are growing earlier and denser, providing more food and habitat for wildlife and endangered species.
The change is visible. Let's cycle back and forth the NASA photos of 2001 and 2024.
Now let's look at different ecosystems.
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001,
2024,
2001.
2024.
CO2, Earth's oxygen of life, helps all of the different types of ecosystems. Even ecosystems in the seas, all life in the seas, yes. Even coral depends on CO2. Algae, marine plants that provide coral their color, benefit from the rise in CO2 just like any other plant.
The goal of climate activists is what they call net zero, commonly called net zero IQ. So, what is net zero IQ? To describe it, let's put it into human terms.
First, remove oxygen in a sealed room full of people to famine levels, 30% of where oxygen is today, a level similar to that near the top of Mount Everest. Then execute a net zero IQ plan of sequestering and reducing the oxygen until it is only a fourth of the level needed to live. What do you think will happen to the people in that room?
Plants and trees are the same. Under net zero IQ, CO2 will rise a bit more until 2050 and then crash 20%. This is what our ecosystems will look like when they are done browning the earth. Food and habitat for wildlife is reduced. Wildlife starves to death. Endangered species will rapidly go extinct. Deserts and wildfires will raise havoc with plants and trees no longer retaining as much water. With fewer trees, global warming and sea level rise will accelerate and pollution will get worse. Net Zero IQ is a well-thought-out plan based totally on political science. It creates a global disaster that requires a world socialist Marxist government to take full control of our lives to fix the problem.
And people eat it up. We need to continue to restore CO2, Earth's oxygen of life, back to the air, so all life on Earth can flourish.
You deserve the truth. I hope you found that very interesting.